My family said I ruined their lives. I just left quietly. I was never the favorite. That was my sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong no matter how cruel she was. No matter how much she got away with, my mom adored her. And me? I was just there, an afterthought, a shadow in my own home. It had always been this way. Growing up, I learned quickly that my opinions didn't matter. My dreams weren't important, and my feelings, either ignored or ridiculed. When my sister failed a test, it was my fault for distracting her. When she lost a friend, I was probably the reason. When she broke something, I must have pushed her into it. And my mom, she believed her every single time. I tried to be the perfect daughter. I worked hard, got good grades, and kept quiet when they insulted me. I never lashed out, never fought back. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I proved my worth, they'd finally love me like they loved her. But nothing changed. And then it all came crashing down the night they told me I had ruined their lives. It started with an argument. Well, they were arguing. I was just standing there letting them yell. My sister had flunked a class, and instead of taking responsibility, she blamed me. Again, I don't even know how. Maybe I stressed her out just by existing. "You've ruined our lives," she screamed. I barely had time to react before my mom echoed, "We'd be happier without you." That was it. The moment that broke me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't beg them to take it back. I just nodded. Then I turned around, walked to my room, grabbed a backpack, and packed whatever I could fit. They didn't stop me. They didn't even watch me leave. And just like that, I was gone. I stepped out into the night, the weight of my backpack pressing against my shoulders, but nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. I walked without a destination, just putting distance between me and the house I had never truly called home. It was cold. I remember that vividly. The air bit at my skin, but I didn't shiver. I was numb. I had always thought that leaving would feel dramatic, like in the movies. Maybe with tears streaming down my face or a last lingering look at the home I was abandoning. But there was none of that. No one ran after me. No one called my name. No one cared. I didn't know where to go. I had no plan, no safety net. My savings were laughable, just a couple $100 I had secretly stashed away from small tutoring gigs. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never go back. I found a cheap motel for the night, paying for a single room with shaky hands. I stared at the bed, but couldn't bring myself to lie down. Instead, I sat at the small desk, the dim yellow light flickering above me, and tried to figure out what to do next. I didn't have a degree. I didn't have connections. I barely had money. But I had one advantage. I had spent my entire life being ignored, underestimated. No one had ever handed me anything. If I was going to make it, I'd have to build something from nothing. I started with what I knew, studying. It sounded ridiculous at the time, but I was good at it. I had spent years excelling in school, tutoring other kids, helping people understand complex subjects. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn that into something. The next day, I walked into a small cafe, ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu, and used their free Wi-Fi to apply for every online tutoring gig I could find. I set my rates low, just enough to get people to notice me. At first, it was barely enough to survive. I lived off instant noodles and dollar store groceries. I rented a room in a shared apartment with 3 strangers who barely acknowledged my existence. But it was still better than where I had come from. Because every day, I woke up knowing that no one would scream at me. No one would blame me for their failures. No one would tell me I was ruining their lives. And that was enough. Months passed. My tutoring gigs grew. 1 client turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. Soon, I was making enough to move into a tiny studio apartment, barely more than a box, but it was mine. And yet, through all of it, my family never called. Not once. Not on my birthday. Not on holidays. Not even to check if I was alive. It hurt in the way old wounds do, deep, silent, lingering. But I told myself it was fine. If they didn't care, then neither did I. A year into my new life, things changed. I had built up a reputation as a tutor specializing in college entrance exams. Students from all over the country were reaching out to me, desperate for help, but I was still trading time for money, and I knew that wasn't sustainable. That's when I got an idea. What if I turned my lessons into something bigger, something scalable? I spent months studying digital marketing, watching hours of free YouTube content, reading every article I could find. Then, I started creating my own online course, the Ultimate SAT Prep Guide. It was a risk. I poured every spare dollar I had into designing the course, building a website, running ads. At first, sales trickled in. 1 here, 2 there. Then something shifted. Word of mouth spread. Students started raving about my methods, sharing them online. And then, almost overnight, it exploded. I woke up one morning to see that my sales had tripled, then quadrupled. Within a few months, I was making more than I had ever thought possible. I moved into a sleek, high-rise apartment, the kind I used to dream about. I traveled, met people who actually respected me, built friendships that weren't based on obligation or blood. I had done it. I had built myself from nothing. And my family? They were nowhere to be found. Not a single message. Not a single call. They didn't care about me. Until this morning. My phone buzzed. I barely glanced at it until I saw the notifications. Mom, 6 missed calls. Sister, 8 missed calls. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. After all this time. After they had made it so clear they never wanted me. I let out a slow breath. I had changed. I wasn't the weak, desperate girl they had pushed out of their lives. I wasn't their punching bag anymore. Whatever they wanted, it wasn't going to be an apology, and I had no intention of making it easy for them. I sat there, staring at the screen for what felt like hours, though in reality, it was only a few minutes. My mind raced. What could they possibly want after all this time? Mom had never once apologized for how she treated me, never admitted how she constantly chose my sister over me. And my sister? She hadn't even cared to notice I was gone. Until now. Now, after everything, they suddenly wanted me. I finally decided to pick up. It was almost surreal, hearing her voice after so long. "Hello," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Sweetie, please, we need to talk." Sweetie. After everything, she had the audacity to call me that? She hadn't used that word in years. The fake tenderness stung. "What's going on?" I asked, not bothering to hide my disbelief. There was a long pause. We've fallen on hard times," Mom finally said, her voice cracking. "Your sister. She's been having trouble at school again. And with everything going on, we just don't have enough. We need your help." I bit my lip, a strange mix of satisfaction and rage bubbling up inside me. This was why they were calling. Not because they missed me, not because they regretted anything, because they needed something. "What kind of help?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. "Money." She blurted it out so fast I almost laughed. "Your sister's tuition, it's due, and we have bills we can't pay. I know we were never there for you, but please, we're struggling. We need you to help us. We know it's a lot to ask, but please, we've tried everything." I could hear her sniffle. Maybe it was real. Maybe it was just guilt trying to worm its way back in. "Please," she repeated, voice trembling. "We need you back. We need your support." The words hung in the air. My support. The same support they threw away years ago. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to control the rush of emotions threatening to choke me. How could they think this was okay? For the first time in a long time, I felt something other than indifference. It was laughable. "You're serious?" I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You really think I'll come back and help you, after everything?" There was silence. Then Mom's desperate voice. "Please don't do this. We know we messed up, but we're your family. You can't just leave us like this." Something snapped in me. "You never cared about me when I needed you." My voice was shaking now, but not with weakness. With anger. "You were too busy with your golden child. You let me disappear. You told me you'd be better off without me." I paused, the rage burning in my chest, but I kept it in check. I wasn't going to let them twist this back on me. "I don't owe you anything." Silence. Then, my sister's voice came through next, frantic, panicked. "I know I was horrible to you, but I need your help. I messed up, okay? I didn't mean it. I've been trying to fix things, but I don't know what to do anymore." I almost laughed. "Fix things? How do you fix years of pain?" "I don't want your apologies," I said coldly. "And I don't owe you my money or my help. You can figure it out, just like I did. But please, I cut her off. "No, you should have thought about this before you kicked me out of your lives." I hung up. My heart was racing, but not just from anger, from satisfaction. After years of silence, of pretending I didn't exist, They needed me. I stood up, pacing the room, letting it sink in. They weren't calling because they missed me. They weren't calling because they loved me. They were calling because they needed me to fix their mess. And now that they were struggling, they finally realized what they had thrown away. But it didn't matter. They didn't deserve me anymore. I was done. But deep down, a part of me wanted to make them a little longer, make them squirm. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen. Mom, again. The same pleading tone filled her messages. Please, I know we can't undo the past, but we need you. I grinned. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into. The phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with another message from Mom. Please, I'm begging you, we don't know where else to turn. I stared at the words, my finger hovering over the screen. A part of me wanted to ignore it entirely. Hadn't I already given them my answer? Hadn't I made myself clear? And yet, there was something about the desperation in her tone that made me hesitate. For a second, I shook my head. No, I wasn't going to soften. I wasn't going to be the one to make their lives easier again. The thing is, I had built something for myself. My empire, so to speak. And my success? It wasn't just about the money. It was about power. The power to decide who got to be a part of my life. And my family? They didn't deserve that privilege anymore. I set the phone down, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. From this vantage point, everything felt small. Distant. The struggles of my old life felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone weaker. Someone forgotten. I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't their burden. And yet, the messages kept coming. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. I wasn't going to give in. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me with their guilt. And yet, deep down, there was a flicker of something. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something darker. But I resisted. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Again. A quick glance at the screen told me it was from my sister. I hesitated. Should I even bother reading this? Before I could stop myself, my thumb swiped across the screen. Her message was waiting. I know I can't change the past, but I've been trying so hard to get into college. They rejected me. And now Mom's saying that if we don't get the money for the retake, I'll never make it. Please, please. I'm so sorry. I felt a pang of something unfamiliar. Not sympathy, not guilt. Something else. Something that made me pause. Was this real? Was this really my sister begging me? Or was she just playing her part? I took a deep breath, my hand shaking as I typed my response. You never cared when I needed you. Why should I care now? I hit send, and for some reason, the weight that settled in my chest felt heavier than I expected. There was a part of me that felt cold, detached, a protective armor I had built over the years. But another part of me? It wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. As the day went on, I tried to push it aside, focus on my work, keep moving forward. But no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not yet. I wasn't just going to forget. I wasn't their savior. With a deep exhale, I typed, "You had your chance, I'm done." I hit send, and something inside me cracked. I knew I had made the right choice. But at the same time, there was this lingering ache in my chest. Because deep down, I couldn't help but wonder, what if? What if this was their last cry for help? What if they really were suffering? But in the end, I had learned one thing. I couldn't fix them. They were beyond saving. And if they wanted anything from me, it had to be on my terms. I set my phone down and tried to forget about them. But the next evening, as I was sitting in my living room, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, I heard it. A knock. Sharp. Quick. Followed by a pause. I looked up, frowning. Who the hell could that be? I stood up, my stomach twisting as I walked toward the door. Something didn't feel right. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Peering through the peephole, my stomach dropped. There they were, Mom, Dad, and my sister, standing on my doorstep. They looked like they hadn't slept in days. Faces pale, drawn. But it wasn't just their appearance that made my pulse quicken. It was the fact that they had shown up here. Uninvited. I froze, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore them, to turn around and walk away, pretend I hadn't seen them. But the rage I had been bottling up came surging forward. I wasn't about to let them invade my space. Not after everything. I unlocked the door and cracked it open, just enough to see them fully. My heart was hammering. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice low, shaking with anger. Mom stepped forward first, her eyes wide with desperation. Please just hear us out," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I stared at her. The same woman who had once told me she'd be better off without me, who had shoved me aside time and time again. And now? Now, she was standing on my doorstep, begging for help. I scoffed. "What the hell are you doing here?" I repeated, my tone rising. "You think just because you show up at my door, I'm going to take you back? You think I'm just going to forget everything you did?" Dad shifted uncomfortably behind her, but he didn't speak. My sister stood next to him, eyes on the ground, avoiding my gaze. We're sorry," Mom said, her voice breaking. I said nothing. She swallowed hard. "We've been trying to reach you, but we know we messed up. She exhaled shakily. "It's just so hard, and we don't know what else to do. You're the only one who can help us." The only one who can help you. The words slammed into me like a gut punch. And with them, all the anger, all the resentment came rushing to the surface. "You didn't need me before. Why now?" My voice was cold, sharp. "You had years to fix this, years, and you never once bothered to reach out to make things right. Not when it mattered." I shook my head. "And now? Now you think you can just show up here and make everything okay?" Silence. For a moment I thought I saw Mom flinch. Her eyes welled with tears. But I couldn't bring myself to care. "We've been struggling," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We don't have money for rent. Your sister's future is slipping away. I don't know what else to do." I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Don't tell me you don't know what else to do," I snapped. My voice was shaking now, but not with sadness, with fury. "You had choices, you made choices, and I wasn't part of them." I stepped forward, my grip tightening on the edge of the door. "But now that everything's falling apart," I exhaled sharply, "suddenly you want me." Mom took a step forward, her hand outstretched. "Please, just listen." I slammed the door in her face. The sound echoed through the house, a sharp, final punctuation to years of pain. For a moment, a rush of power surged through me. For the first time in my life, I was in control. But as I stood there, hand resting on the door handle, something gnawed at me. It wasn't guilt. It was something worse. The realization that they hadn't come here to make things right. They hadn't come because they were sorry. They had come because they had nowhere else to turn. They needed me. And I hated it. The anger wasn't the only thing burning inside me. A part of me wanted them to hurt, to feel, truly feel the weight of what they had done, to know what it was like to be cast aside. And the fact that they thought they could just show up here after everything, it made my blood boil. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing on the other side of the door. But they didn't leave. I could hear them talking, their muffled voices leaking through the cracks. Mom was pleading. My sister was crying. Dad was murmuring something, his voice weary, drained. I clenched my fists. I couldn't stand it. The desperation, the audacity, the sheer, unbelievable entitlement. I whipped the door open. They were still there. Mom's eyes were red, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. My sister stood beside her, head bowed in shame. And Dad, he looked like a man who had lost everything and didn't know how to get it back. I let them stand there in silence. Let them sit in the mess they had made. Let them feel what it was like to be left outside. And then I spoke. It was quiet, steady, but it hit like a slap. "You don't get to come here and expect forgiveness just because you're struggling now." Mom flinched. "You had years to fix this. Years to realize what you lost. But you didn't care then. And I'm not going to be your solution now." Mom's lips parted, about to argue, but I held up a hand. "No. You don't get to speak. You don't get to explain, because I already know the truth." I took a breath, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I built my life from the ground up, without you, despite you, and I am not going to let you drag me back down." Their eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, just a quiet, undeniable satisfaction. "Go," I said simply. "Fix your own mess. I'm done with that." And with that I shut the door, for good. Weeks passed, my life went on, my business grew, my network expanded, and for the first time in forever, I felt free. I never heard from them again. No calls, no messages, nothing. And you know what? That was fine. It was a quiet peace I hadn't even realized I had been craving. And as time went on, I came to understand something important. The people who hurt you, the people who abandoned you, they are not the ones you should be looking to for validation. You are the one who matters. You are the one who gets to decide your future. And in the end, I had learned one very simple truth. You can't keep giving to people who never gave you anything back. The door had closed, and this time, it stayed closed.